What's up, YouTube? I'm excited to bring this video to you today. It's been about 6 months since I've made a video, but I want to talk about Page Optimizer Pro and just explain kind of how far it's come and what some of its new features are and how this is really a game changer for doing on-page SEO. If you use this tool correctly, you can get huge rankings boosts, and it just makes SEO easier in a way. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't obviously still work on your end involved. You still have to kind of factor in your competition, factor in the keyword you're ranking for, use the knowledge that you have in SEO. You can't just solely rely on this tool to do everything for you, but this tool does help out a lot, and it will give you a lot of information that is going to help you boost your page. So without further ado, let's run through it. I also have a promo code in the description, the very top of the description. If you use that promo code, you can get, I think, a few, I'm not sure how many, but a few free scans on Page Optimizer Pro. If you go in here and you create an account, apply that promo code, and you're going to get some free scans to try it out and see how you like it. So anyway, let's get right into it. I'm going to show you how to set up a project, and I'm going to run through how to really get the most out of this tool, and explain kind of the method behind it. So here's essentially the dashboard area, right? We have projects, and so I created a project already. This is just basically a little testing thing to show you how to use it. And so what you're going to do is you're going to hit View Project, and you're going to add a page to begin. And this is one of the big improvements I've seen in Page Optimizer Pro, is just the level of explanation they give you now is way more detailed. Before, it was kind of like you had to figure it out on your own a little bit more, and I think a lot of people were getting confused by that. So thankfully, the developers have added this content here, as well as a best practices list, which I'll show you in just a minute. But the very first thing we're going to want to do is we want to enter the name of our page. So in this case, we're just going to do the home page. I know typically, you're going to use this on inner pages and whatnot, but just for the sake of this example, let's do the home page. And so typically, you'll put the URL string here that you're going to do if you're doing an inner page. If you're just doing the home page, you're going to check that box, leave it blank. And you're going to put your keyword here. So in this case, it's water damage restoration, Kansas City. And we're going to choose our location. They have all these countries and continents here, which is really useful. Well, the only countries they have are UK, Canada, US, and they have some continents. But yeah, this is really useful if you're doing, especially for local SEO, or if you're just doing SEO within a specific area. Today we're just doing the US, and then we'll hit Fetch Variations. So this is going to pull a number of different keyword variations based on this main keyword that we typed in here. Now, you might be wondering, well, where do they get these variations? That you're going to see it in just a second. It shouldn't take 90 seconds. So essentially, here's our list. Essentially, they're getting these from Google search results. So when you go through a search result page like this, you'll notice that there's a lot of bolded terms, right? And these bolded terms are essentially keyword variations of our main keyword that we typed in. So this is where Page Optimizer is getting them from. This is what they deem as highly semantically relevant terms that you need to include in your content. And so when they mention all these here, or when they bold all of these here, and they include them here, essentially when we run the scan, it's going to show us where we can add those variations within our own page, and how we can better optimize that for those semantic variations. Because remember, topical relevancy is super key in SEO now, and you need to make sure that your pages are mentioning all those, not only the main keyword that you're trying to rank for, but all the little side terms within that keyword family. So you can think of this as kind of the umbrella of this keyword family here. Okay, so we have all those. Next is we're going to want to enter our competitors. Now this is a section that kind of trips people up, because I think a lot of times people will just go straight down the list. So let's say that we're on page 1 and we start looking, okay, well, who are our competitors? Well, when we go down the list, we're going to hit sites. This is a local search, so we're going to hit sites like Home Advisor. This looks like a newspaper blog type site, expertise.com. There's going to be a few of those larger sites that are more kind of directory style sites. You don't want to include those as your competitors. When you're picking competitors, you want to keep it as kind of apples to apples as possible. So if we're a water damage restoration company, we want to only add other sites that are like ours. We don't want to add Home Advisor. We don't want to add this. We don't want to add this. And as well, like in addition to being Home Advisor, you can see that the content of the page is different than what we're trying to rank for. The content here is a 5 best, so it's like a blog post almost. It's a list style post. This is also a blog post. This is literally from a blogging website. So we know that these pages are ranking, but they're not the kind of pages that we're building. So we're not trying to rank as a blog style post. We're trying to rank as a service page. So you really got to keep that in mind when implementing competitors. It's the same thing with e-commerce. You don't want to add sites like Amazon or Target or Best Buy or any of those big sites that show up at the top of search. A lot of times Google will add them there for something that's known as query deserves diversity. And essentially they think that when people see Amazon, that's what they want to see. So they're probably going to click on it. So it's basically just giving the people what they want. It doesn't always mean that Amazon's doing everything great SEO-wise to rank. It's just that they're essentially Amazon. So we just want to add the ones that are closest to ours. And I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to pause it and do that right now so it doesn't take forever. Okay, so right now I'm at 9 competitors, and I think I'm going to leave it there because I had to spill onto page 2 a little bit. And you want to be careful with this. If you have to go to page 2, it's okay from what I've found, but you don't want to go too far down on page 2 because, well, these people aren't ranking. So you don't want to you don't want to implement people who aren't ranking because that doesn't really help you much. You want to focus on the page 1 results. So I essentially did that, but we just sort of ran out since we had sites like Home Advisor and expertise.com on here, so I couldn't use those. But okay, so now we have our competitors here. So we have 9 of them, and I think that's going to be fine for now. Next thing we want to do is we want to hit validate. Occasionally when you hit validate, you're going to have an issue if, say, a site is 404ing or that you typed in the URL wrong. That can happen occasionally. But it looks like we're good. So we are ready to run the scan. So I'm going to hit submit analysis. And you can add a focus group. Now, to be honest, I'm not really sure about this. I never use this feature. I think that it's better to just treat everyone the same in your competitors list. What I think this does is it puts a greater emphasis on certain competitors over others. For this example, we're not going to do that. We're just going to hit continue, and we're going to let it run, and it's going to take just a couple minutes here. All right, so our scan is complete, and here's our summary. Now, here's the thing with these tools, and this is kind of, there's a lot of SEO experts who will echo these thoughts. Never, ever, ever look at the percentage. This is just kind of a vanity metric. It has really little correlation to how your page is actually optimized. So never look at this score here. Focus solely on the recommendations when we hit view. Okay, so this is another thing. So I mentioned that they list the best practices now. This is really important to read. In fact, they don't let you get to the actual page without reading this first. So I really like that. I think this is it's good to make people have to read this, because if you don't use the tool right, again, like I said before, a tool is only as good as you know how to use it. So if you don't know what you're doing, then you're not going to get the most out of this tool, and you can really damage a website. So let's just kind of go through these quickly. Choosing the right competitors, like I talked about, it's really, really crucial. There are instructional videos within Page Optimizer Pro that walk you through that process of how to choose competitors. I did it a little bit lightly and kind of just explained that the main thing is you want to focus on apples to apples competitors, and mostly competitors on the first page, a little bit on the second page if needed. Secondly, we want to focus on the signals that need to be increased first. Okay, so what we're going to see in a minute, you're going to see what that means. But essentially, Page Optimizer Pro shows you what areas of your page need to be increased. So maybe you need to add keywords to your H2 tags or your H3 tags, or you need to reduce keywords in those tags, or add keywords to your image alt tags, or whatever. And that's essentially how you optimize a page. The thing is, you want to make sure that you're first adding signals when it says to increase, and don't decrease until you've finished increasing. What we found with Page Optimizer Pro, again, it's an amazing tool, but if you decrease signals too quickly and you decrease it too much, a lot of times you can see negative results. So you just have to be really careful with it. That being said, if you follow all the instructions they lay out and you increase when it says to increase, that's when we're seeing the biggest gains rankings-wise. So always focus on increasing first. And I would even say it's okay to increase past the threshold, a little bit past the threshold of being optimized. You can even go maybe 2 or 3 times where it says to go. Now, obviously, you don't want to be way, way, way over optimized, and this stuff can change at any time given Google's algorithms. But generally speaking, at this moment, it seems to be okay to be a little bit over optimized on your signals. So focus on, if anything, be over optimized instead of under optimized. Number 3. Start with exact match recommendations, then work your way towards the variations. This is mostly just an ease of use sort of thing. It's a good workflow to go from exact match. So exact match is, so in this example, exact match would be water damage restoration, Kansas City. That's the exact match term. Variations would be things like Kansas City, water damage restoration by themselves, restoration, damage, water, terms like that. Like I said, the terms that Google bolds, flood damage repair, this is also semantically related, stuff like that. So those would all be variations of our main term. And you want to use those where POP tells you to use those as well. But it's easier to start with exact match just because those are obviously the main terms. And it typically tells you, add these to your title tag, your H1, stuff like that. It's just a little bit easier to follow from a workflow standpoint. Number 4, the signals are in a good order of importance from top to bottom. Yeah, I think that's generally true. I mean, it starts, the title tags H1, H2, H3 are towards the top, and it just goes down like that, H4, H5, H6. If your word count is, oh, sorry, I missed one. Page structure suggestions are not part of the on-page score. They'll help you build a page that can rank well. So you're going to see in a second, but there's a tab that's going to give us instructions for how to construct our page element-wise. The thing is, it's not telling us what keywords to use. It's just telling us what elements to use. So I think that's a good tab if you're just creating a page from scratch and you're giving it to a writer and saying, hey, build me this page based on these suggestions. I think it's really useful for that. But if you're optimizing a page that you have already created, then you shouldn't just scrap it and go in accordance to what they say to use for structuring, unless you're just way, way off. But since this isn't a direct ranking factor, I would focus more on the exact match and the variation recommendations before I look at that. If your word count is under target, increase it. So this is a general rule in SEO these days. People say that, oh, the page with the most content wins. That's a bit of an exaggeration. However, you typically want to be a little bit over the target rather than under for word count. So if everyone on page 1 is at 800 words and you're at 1,000, leave it. If you're at 700 or if you're at 600 or 500, you might want to get up to 800. If your word count's over, start with the alternative. So this part I'm a little skeptical about. I think it depends on how far over you are. If you're within about 5 or 10% of the target word count, I would say stick with the regular recommendations because it's really not going to be that far off. If you're like 2x or 3x, if you're thousands of words over the word count, then you might want to consider just trimming your content in general. But then I guess you might want to look at this. But I would say focus on the regular recommendations if you're within a reasonable word count. This is probably the most important one on this list. If you're already ranking well, be smart about your changes. Like I was saying, Page Optimizer Pro is just a tool. It's an amazing tool, but it's just a tool nevertheless. You have to use your best judgment when doing SEO. You can't solely rely on this to improve your rankings. If you're already on page 1, or if you're already low on page 1 even, or anywhere on page 1, I would say don't even use this tool. I would say focus on improving things like conversion rate optimization for your page, user experience, page speed, things like that, things that are more kind of behind the scenes. I wouldn't even touch your on page if you're ranking that well. I would focus on that stuff, try to improve your user experience and see if your rankings improve. Or even focus on improving the CTR through altering the title tag slightly or meta description slightly, but don't go through your page and make huge sweeping changes based on pop. It can really negatively affect you, and I've heard some horror stories about that. So just be very careful with that. And this speaks to that as well. Do not blindly follow any recommendations. Look at your competitors, and that's the thing too is you want to go through all of your competitors and visually go through their pages and see what they're doing, and identify patterns here. Oh, this isn't very well optimized website, but typically speaking, you want to go through your competitors and just eyeball their pages and see what they're doing and see what you need to do in accordance with pop. Conservative approach is to go with lesser number between recommendations and focus. Yeah, I mean, again, I would just say, it's okay to go maybe 2 or 3x over on some of the recommendations, but just try to be careful with it. Just be smart about it. Don't go too crazy. One other thing I will say though, when you're doing any on-page stuff it's kind of at a mass scale like this, I would say try to do it all in one sitting if you can, and then fetch the page in Search Console. Typically, we found that Google will oftentimes, if you just make little changes to a page and then fetch it, and then try to make pages again, Google will oftentimes, Google's smart, and they're going to notice that you're trying to do some SEO work to your site, and it can actually negatively affect your page in some cases. If you keep going back to the same page and trying to make changes, it can actually hurt things. So just be a little careful with that. I would do all of your changes for a given page at one time. The tool does not do any catching of pages. Yeah, so you might want to clear your cache before using it. I haven't had any issues with that yet. If you have an established page, we do not recommend changing your URL to include your primary keyword. Yes, this is very important as well. Do not change your URL if you're already ranking. Do not do anything. You should really be doing very little things if you're already ranking. If you're ranking anywhere on page 1, really just focus on conversion rate optimization and user experience. Those are really the 2 areas that are going to give you the most improvement. You will often see movement in a matter of days. I've actually seen sites jump within 24 to 48 hours. in some cases, in less competitive niches. But yeah, I would say wait a couple weeks. If you haven't seen anything in a couple weeks, then you might want to do another pass through it, run another scan, but you should see something within a few days. And that's essentially it. So just look at these. I like to look back at these every few weeks and just kind of remind myself, how to use this effectively. Then you'll check that box, hit submit, and here we go. So here is what our analysis page will look like. And the beauty of this is you can go to summary and you can download this as a Excel file. So if you wanted to hand this to someone else on your SEO team or a writer, it's really easy to hand it to them as a deliverable. So like it says in the best practices, we want to start with our exact match keyword in the recommendations. Now, this is a very easy one since we're using an EMD, exact match domain. This is obviously going to have it in a lot of our stuff already. Yeah, this is interesting. So I guess none of our competitors are using this in their headers or in their paragraph text. All right, well, that's unusual. Typically, it'll tell you to add an exact match in some of these spots. But yeah, that's unusual. But the most important ones are going to be up here in the meta title and H1. So at this point in time, again, this stuff always changes, but at this point in time, it seems like the best move is to have your H1, at the very beginning of to have your exact keyword at the very beginning of your H1, as far to the left as you can get it. And if you can make it an absolute H1 where it's literally just, if it literally just says water damage restoration Kansas City and no other words, that's even better. So again, this stuff always changes. I don't want to give you just a hard, fast rule, but this is how it is right now. So, okay, there's nothing really here. So at the bottom here, it says reduce by 5. I wouldn't really look at this section. HTML head and body tags. The thing is, it's very vague. It can be literally anywhere within your head and body tags. And if it only says to reduce by 5, again, I wouldn't reduce unless it's just egregious. If it says like reduce by 97 or something like that. But even then, I'd want to make sure that I'm not, because the problem is then you could start reducing keywords in spots where you really need them. You could reduce them from your headers or your paragraph text or these other areas here, and that could hurt you. So I wouldn't worry too much about this section. I'd focus on everything else first. So we go to variations, and now we see what it's supposed to look like. So yeah, this is a typical Page Optimizer Pro scan here. These are all the variations that are listed here. So these are all the ones that Google, again, is taking from the bold, right? These terms right here. And they added them here. And these are terms that we want to sprinkle throughout our content. And it's giving us all the areas where we should add them. So theoretically, we should add some variations to our meta title. We want to, reduce from our meta title, reduce from the H1. But that's because we're using an exact match domain name. So it's going to be a little stuffy looking. But we want to focus on increasing first anyway. So let's look at these. Increase the number of variations H2 by 4. So in our H2 headers, that essentially means that we're going to add some variations of these terms. So either want to add, Kansas City or restoration Kansas City. You don't want to make it sound too stuffy or too SEO-ish, but you want to include some sort of variation that encompasses at least 4 of those terms together. Now, the thing is, too, if you use, let's say we're using water damage Kansas City as a term, then that's going to count as, that's probably going to get us over 4 because that also encompasses some of these individual terms like damage, Kansas City, stuff like that. So keep that in mind too. You can fill this up very easily by just adding one of these bigger multi-keyword terms. It's going to encompass little ones. And we're going to go through and do each of those that it suggests here for increasing. So same thing with H3, same thing with H4. Paragraph text by 38. Now, this essentially is telling us that we don't have enough words. That's pretty clear, right? Because when we look at word count, we have 260 words, and the target is 860. So just by adding words to the page, literally just adding words, getting it up to that total, that's going to get us to where we need to be for a lot of these. So, don't go through these too robotically and just say, oh, I need to do this. Oh, then I need to do this, and da-da-da. Just focus on getting it towards this word count level, and then a lot of these will take care of themselves. But again, you can give this to a writer and say, hey, I need something that's 900 words, and I need you to include a lot of these different variations within that. And because this is pretty easy to follow for most writers. And you can kind of train them up. You can show them this video even and explain how to use it. Increase the number of variations of your keyword in bold. So that's just, literally keywords that have the bold tag around them. And here's keywords with the italic. And then down here, it gives you kind of an amalgamation of what signals you need to optimize within this range and this range and this range. Usually when you focus on these and you do these right, these will take care of themselves. However, sometimes they could be a little skewed. Again, unless these are way over, I wouldn't worry too much about these. I would focus mostly on nailing these, because if you're going to get these right, then these are going to be pretty close as well. And then, this one, it says 94, but I just wouldn't worry too much about this head and body tags. It's just not very specific to any one signal. I would do all this stuff up here that's important, because remember, we want to go from top to bottom anyway. This stuff's the most important up here. So let's focus on this first. Let's see how our page reacts, and then go from there. And if needed, then we can de-optimize, but typically don't want to reduce unless something goes horribly wrong. So that's kind of it. It's pretty easy to use. I think it's extremely user friendly. Honestly, for the level of detail it gives you and the kind of resources it gives you, I think it's extremely simple to use. You can give it to a writer. You can use it yourself. There's graphs that kind of show you how you're optimized and whatnot. And again, you can get some really nice results using this. So, what's the best workflow to do this? I would suggest doing a run of it again in one sitting. You don't want to break it up too much. You want to do it all kind of within a short amount of time. Then fetch it through Search Console, fetch and render through Search Console. And then if you don't see anything within a couple weeks at the latest, then I would go back and kind of explore, okay, did I do this correctly? Another thing too is I would also recommend using this in accordance with a tool called Quora. Quora, I think it's SEOtoollab.com/Quora or something like that. But anyway, that's another good on-page tool. It's a little more expensive than this one, but I found that the two are pretty useful when you're using them together. So you kind of just, you run multiple scans in both tools, and you kind of pit them against each other and just kind of see which one's telling you certain things, the other one's telling you certain things, and just kind of mixing and matching them like that. That can give you a really powerful on-page SEO strategy that you can use on client sites. I use this on client sites all the time, and it's done amazing for us so far. You can use it on your own sites, on your affiliate pages. So if you're making a new affiliate post from scratch, you can do new page, and then now they've added this feature. So this is if you haven't built out the page yet. Before you had to have the page built out in order to use this. But let's say that you want to create a new affiliate post and you haven't built it yet, you're trying to get the structure for it, you just check this box here and you go from there, and it's going to give you suggestions the same way. But obviously, since you haven't built the page out yet, you're essentially just starting from scratch and going through and building it out based on let me get back there, based on these suggestions. So here's the page structure suggestions we were talking about. And if you haven't built out a page yet, I do recommend looking at these. Again, these aren't directly correlated to rankings, but it will help you sort of formulate how your page should look, what your competitors are doing, how they're structuring their pages, whether they're using, are they using lists, are they using, a lot of times local sites or, affiliate sites obviously will use lists to talk about, to list products or to list services. So you can kind of see that here. And of course, another very important thing is you always want to go and look at the individual websites themselves and see what people are doing on them, so that you have the full breadth of knowledge that you can possibly have. So anyway, that's about it. Thanks for watching. I'm going to try to make more videos. It's been a while, but again, just been really busy with SEO stuff, and I'm happy about that. So again, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, all that. Try Page Optimizer Pro if you can. The promo code should be good for a few scans, so you can give it a shot. And yeah, watch the results, man. This tool is amazing. So best of luck, and I'll see you next time.